All the people who found themselves in this situation came to Israel with hope to live happily, be useful for our state, make our state flourish. It's all crumbling. Look here. I didn't cover it with plastic bag and it's crumbling. Look at the walls of this house. It's made of chipboard. It was paid $65,000 for this house. And it's empty. It's eaten by termites, and if you look here, it's cardboard. It's impossible to live there. I came to Ofakim in 1992. Before that I lived in Beersheba, but when I was proposed to receive social housing, I passed to Ofakim. And after a certain period of time, until 94, we saw advertisements of quality houses that are sold. We saw this house and decided to buy it. So there were state structures that stood after that. Yeah, it was Ministry of Construction and government company Shikun and Pituach. And how much did it cost? For that time when I bought it, it was 270,000 shekels. I believe that we were cheated. Maybe it's not nice to say that, but this temporary house was like slept in, and instead of it, we paid like for regular concrete house. In the period of massive repatriation wave from the former Soviet Union in the 90s, in order to receive rapidly problem of the housing for new immigrants, Aryeh Deri, that then held office of the Minister of Interior, and after committing certain crime and being in jail, holds this office now too, initiated purchase abroad and export to Israel of 11,000 of so-called lighthouses. Because these lighthouses made of chipboard didn't meet Israeli construction standards, Aryeh Deri enacted special light construction regulation that exempted lighthouses of meeting Israeli standards. As a result, as you already heard before, there were terrible construction problems that appeared in the houses almost immediately after their purchase by new immigrants. And what is interesting, this same Aryeh Deri, after causing such a terrible harm to the owners of lighthouses, is not ashamed to accuse new immigrants of coming to Israel illegally, not being Jews. They are displeased. According to their declarations, Ministry of Interior makes them DNA analysis and makes them troubles on their way to immigration to Israel. Yes, you know, I recognize this fault. There is law of return that exists in Israel, but if I would enact this law, it would look completely different. It lets a lot of new immigrants who are not Jews to come to Israel. To our great sorrow, we don't know the exact number, but those are hundreds of thousands of new immigrants from the former Soviet Union that came according to the law of return. They are not Jews according to Jewish traditional law, and they are here to our great sorrow.
And I'm very thankful for your attention to the situation of Soviet Jewry here in Israel. There are two main issues that are very important for us right now. I'm going to share with you. One of them is the famous funds that were allocated by the US Congress in the 90s in order to receive and resettle newly arriving immigrants that we learned from the US Congress report, and we started the process in order to obtain some information on the documents on these funds. As we learned from the US Congress report in the 90s, there were grants and loans in the total amount up to $10 billion that were specifically allocated in order to help to Israel to receive properly the wave of immigration from the former Soviet Union. So what happened with these funds? We started to make inquiries to the Ministry of Finance and Ministry of Absorption. It's the agency that was established especially in order to help to immigrants resettle in the new land. And it was almost a year they processed our inquiries, and it was with a great delay. They gave some responses, but most important that even when they gave the response, they responded that they don't know anything about these funds. And we had no remedy but to apply to the court. We started special court procedure. It's called administrative petition with Jerusalem District Court sitting as a court for administrative affairs. And we filed special petition to move the court to make ministries serve us with the documents. When ministries, of course, responded that a lot of time passed and they don't know where the documents and such, until it was the hearing held on May 13th last year, where the court actually delivered judgment ordering the ministries to serve the documents in the period of 30 days. 30 days passed, there were more days that passed months after months, and after something like 5 months, but they didn't serve the documents themselves and again tried to mislead us. We filed special motion according to the contempt of the court ordinance, and we moved the court to impose on them file or imprisonment in order to make them serve the documents finally. And what was very interesting, they filed again the response saying that they don't have anything, and we tried to convey to the court they're obviously lying, because there were two parts in the judgment, and they even didn't try to implement the first part, while about the second part they just didn't try to implement it. But the court finally denied our motion, saying that of course they tried, they conducted another search, they looked after the documents, they didn't find. So it's impossible to say that the ministries evaded implementing the judgment. So the conclusion from all this is that all this money is was going through the sieve. We didn't receive it. I mean, it would be great if it would reach its addressee, because we wouldn't have been in such a catastrophic situation right now. The catastrophic situation that may be called, no exaggeration, humanitarian catastrophe in all the spheres, in the housing, in their work, employment, in health, in social welfare, in whatever sphere you take. But of course, the most important sphere is the housing, because for every person, and specifically for Jew arriving in the new land, house is the most important thing. So how the state resolved this problem of housing for the new immigrants in the 90s, back in the 90s, the same 90s, in order to resolve this problem, hastily, the government approved purchase of some 11,000 of prefabricated houses. It's a one-story building made of, drywall or plaster, and it was all these houses were constructed, were installed in the southern cities of Israel, like Beersheba, Arad, Ofakim, Netivot, and some other cities. After a certain period in use, all these houses became damaged beyond repair. It was impossible to use them, but the worst worst thing is that it appeared that termites and some other pests that inhabit a Negev desert, they're not averse at all to eat these plywood walls and floors and dividing walls. So what happened is that no pre-treatment was conducted in the area that was planned for construction of these houses. As a result, barracks eaten by termites crumble. They are crumbling. These floors and dividing walls are breaking down. They absorb moisture. Wooden beams are rotting. Roofs are leaking. The houses are in a terrible condition, and it appeared also that on the heat, which is ordinary climatic condition in the south of Israel, these walls that are eaten by termites, they evolve gases and release formaldehyde, which caused already a lot of lighthouses residents respiratory tract diseases like cancers and some other, and claimed thousands of people's lives. So the situation, as we see in this light construction quarters, is just terrible. And what is interesting, until something like 2004, this problem of termites was completely ignored in Israel. It was like, problem doesn't exist. If lighthouses residents complained too strong, then Ministry of Construction allocated certain funds in order to make cosmetic repairs, wall painting, sunken toilet replacement, stuff like that, which of course didn't help. And sometimes after these repairs, the houses would destroy completely. But the problem was not recognized. And then certain lighthouses residents were united under NGO. There were few, but a specific NGO I'm speaking about, it's Association Home and Family. The head of association, Lydia Zilberstein, now late Lydia Zilberstein, who died from cancer, unfortunately. And they united under this association, and they put two main goals. One was to make a government to make it recognize termites problem that it exists, and another one to adopt some state program in order to reconstruct these houses and maybe even destroy them and replace them with houses from conventional materials, because these barracks proved impossible to live in. And they started complete, pilgrimage on the Sorny path, if I can call it like this, because they passed parliamentary commissions, they passed legal processes and inspections by state controller. And where it stands now, at first in the parliamentary commission, what they did succeed to do, they succeeded to bring it to the recognition, the problem of termites, because before that, Ministry of Construction would only respond, there are no termites and there will never be. They didn't recognize the problem itself. So right now the problem is recognized, and the Ministry of Construction started, back then, to make a persecution. Of course, this persecution, it was the tremendous costs, at the costs that were more or less equal to the cost of capital construction. And of course, it didn't bring any results. It didn't cause any significant harm to the termites. That may not be said of the lighthouses residents, because again, it was made with certain materials that